Hello, GEMA members, and welcome to our next installment of the GEMA Talks vidcast series. I'm thrilled today to welcome Molly Solomon. Molly is the Executive Vice President of Content and Executive Producer of the Golf Channel. Hello, Molly.
Hello, Rich. Thanks for the invitation. You're my lunch date today.
Oh, good. I better be a good one. I'm going to start by bragging about you a little bit, so don't blush. But Molly is one of the most distinguished sports executives in the industry today. In addition to the role I just mentioned at the Golf Channel, where she served since 2012, and under her leadership, they've had record ratings and viewership. She was the first woman to ever serve as an exec producer of a sports cable network. And then most recently, in late 2019, she was named the executive producer and president of NBC Olympics Productions. So that means that she's in charge of the entire production of the entire Olympics for NBC. She's the first woman to serve in that role as well in the history of sports. And she's an 11-time Sports Emmy Award winner. She's been with NBC for, I think it's now 30 years, and had a decorated career there. And she has, I think you've worked on 10 Olympics. Is that right?
Might be 11. I can't
11 Olympics, which is amazing. So very excited to talk to you today, and obviously very proud of you as a fellow Hoya. So let's just start by saying, I was trying to think about if there's anyone I know in the industry that's been more impacted by the coronavirus crisis than someone like you. I mean, given the fact, I'm sure all of you on this call know that the Olympics were delayed 1 year recently. And in fact, obviously golf came to a halt for several months and is just getting going again. But please tell the audience what it's been like the last couple months, especially that first month, and how have you navigated through it?
Yeah, and I got the new job with the Olympics, which is actually an old job, but we'll get into that later. So I got the job to oversee Olympics production in November, and there happens to be an Olympics planned for July. So it was kind of like cramming for an exam, but I had worked in the Olympics previously. So if anybody could do it, I said, you're able to do this. And we have such an amazing team. Yeah. And so it was kind of like this adrenaline rich for 4 months. I moved away from my family up to NBC Sports headquarters, but they had the plan in place, and there was certain tweaking we did. And we just, we kind of decided what our mission statement was and how we could achieve that. And we were ready to go. We're going to do it. And there's some amazing stars that were set to descend on Tokyo. And then the middle of March, I was actually at the Players' Championship wearing my other hat, my golf hat. And in the course of one afternoon, it's kind of like the world changed, but also through my lens, the sports world changed as, NBA players tested positive. They started canceling seasons, and I get chills right now because we're sitting in the TV compound, and it felt like everything changed in the matter of hours. Yeah. And the Olympics, they were slower to announce their plans, but equally so, that's what big institutions do. They kind of take it all in. It's an international body. But in the course of the next few weeks, we found out that the Olympics would be postponed, and but it felt inevitable at some point because of where we were and where we were going. So immediately our lives changed, working from home, as the whole world did. But then we also have to plan for Olympics in 1 year. And the challenge of working on the games is that you're not just one broadcaster. We work with an entire group. And this consortium, just imagine that you have to make decisions for the summer of 2021 right now. And we don't know what that's going to look like. Is there going to be a vaccine? And no one else has yet done television. I mean, we will in the coming weeks, but has done television with social distancing. How many people is safe to have in a compound? Where do you put your announcers? And yet we have to plan for that at the biggest TV event in the world next year in Tokyo. So it's a lot of challenges. We're going to figure it out, but it's really challenging to do that, not knowing what the world looks like, and we have to make decisions now.
Yeah, and what are some of the biggest logistical challenges specifically that you have to think about?
Well, you have to think about what if there's not a vaccine and what happens. And we're doing this in all our sports across NBC, and working with CBS on golf. What if you're in a compound and people test positive? What do you do the next day? Do you have backup production crews? So you need redundancy, but now you also need contingency. And you're in an event that big, there's only so many qualified people, and we're employing all of them. So just thinking about contingency is really,
A lot of
really
scenario planning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, if given it's a year away, you probably would even be traveling to Tokyo right now, I would imagine, to do like prep and all that. Is that all being done by Zoom right now? And I assume that's challenging.
Yeah, but again, I would say 90% of our plans were in place.
Okay.
So we don't need to, and we're not going to change a lot. The IOC has promised us that the scope of the games will be intact. So really, it's more adjusting to this new challenge in this new scenario, and how do you produce content with all of these precautions.
Yeah.
So that's bigger. And by the way, Japan is still dealing with the pandemic, so there's no reason to go there. I would say, I must have used the word challenge like 15 times already in this conversation, but also now think about this. NBC is producing an Olympics in the summer of 2021, and 180 days after we get off the air, we have the Beijing Winter Olympics and a Super Bowl the very first weekend, which is going to be amazing. But my group now moves into Beijing planning. So on any given day, you may spend the morning talking about Tokyo and the afternoon talking about Winter Olympic venues. And both of them are in Asia, which, is challenging in itself. So we're, just with the time difference and everything like that. But we've now moved on because Tokyo's in a good place. We're moving on to Beijing planning.
Okay, my head's officially spinning. Thank you. Given that I know you've been involved in many, many Olympics, as we said, but now that you're at the helm, is there anything you're looking to bring in terms of your leadership style, or in terms of the way you want to produce the Olympics? Or is it, hey, Rich, you know what, it's actually been a well-oiled machine. There's not a lot. Or yeah, you know what, there are a couple things that I think I can bring to the party that I'm excited to do.
Yeah, the greatest gift, I think, was leaving. I actually worked at NBC Sports and Olympics from 1990, the day I graduated from Georgetown, through 2012. And then NBC Universal bought the Golf Channel, and I wanted to do day-to-day content and get out of big events and do more day-to-day. And that was kind of the period of the rise of the cable sports channel, and I loved golf. So to me, that was the dream job. So I went away in 2012. So I've got to sit on the couch and watch the content, and it gives you a different perspective. And I think also leaving and working in a different realm opens your eyes to different people and different ways to do it. In the end, I was just so humbled to come back and take on this role, but I'm also reinvigorated. I think like anything, you go on vacation, you come back and you can't wait to attack your job. And as you said, it's a well-oiled machine, but like anything, it constantly needs to be infused with new ideas. And nothing's broken with the Olympics, but I do think we constantly have to contemporize and look at the way the audience views sports and how they want to view sports and stories, and adapt to that. The great part about going to Asia and working in Tokyo and Beijing is it's actually an advantageous time zone because of the 12-13 hour time difference. Same thing they had in Pyeongchang in 18. And so we get to do a lot of live events. So it's happening in the morning in Tokyo, which is actually primetime in the US, which is still the most important thing we do is our primetime show. So swimming finals are in the morning over there, which is live in prime time. So that my goal is definitely for our team to take advantage of the time zones and the live, because that's what we now crave really in our sports, right, is live. And the other thing in watching the shows back in my history at the Olympics is I wanted to infuse them with the tapestry of the games, because we know that the most people in the United States, they really want to watch swimming, the popular sports, diving, track and field, gymnastics. But there's so many other cool things that are happening around the games. And we've got an amazingly versatile anchor in Mike Tirico. So I want to weave in all these new sports, surfing, skateboarding. What else can we do so the viewer at night says, oh my gosh, I've got 4 hours and it's the best seat in the house. So I want to bring all of that to them and all those great storylines and athletes.
That's great. Let's turn to golf for a minute.
Mhm.
So I don't know, I'm not exactly sure what time of the season it was in golf. I was really heating up, I guess. So that came to a halt. Talk about that and how Golf Channel has had to adapt to that.
I got to actually do a vlog for my son for his journalism class, and we talked about that. So I'm
Good.
going to give you the same answer I gave my son. It,
Good.
it was interesting when the pandemic hit. We were, as you said, we were right in the middle of March, which really feels like the PGA Tour season's getting underway. The Masters is coming, and the FedEx playoffs come in the summer. So we really get underway with all the big events, and then it just stopped. And Golf Channel, we just stopped for the first 2 weeks. I think all of us were almost paralyzed by what is this? We've never experienced it. And we just put tournament replays up. Then about a couple of days later, our operations team came to us and they go, hey, we've been working on this project. We've created a virtual control room. And so watching these very inventive people come together and provide solutions. And so then we started producing, and it's now, I think, almost it's got a title, it's watch along programming. So, you can watch Tiger watch the Masters, or you can watch Maria Fassi and Jennifer Kupcho watch the Women's Amateur, and you kind of give the viewer added value for the replays. And we started doing all of that from home, which it may look seamless on the screen, but it's really incredibly difficult to do. And then in the next week after that, we ventured into creating content from home for each of our news platforms. So we started with 5-minute digital updates. Everybody's sitting in their kitchen and we're sending cameras here and light kits. And I was just so proud of the team coming together and finding a solution to something. It'd be really easy not to do anything, but the priority was we kept everybody out of our building in Orlando because, one, we wanted it to be clean and ready, and I use clean in the broader sense, clean and ready to go when tournaments resumed, but also we wanted to keep people safe. And so it's been really just amazing to watch these folks at work and see what we've produced. And now we are ready to come back to work. So I think the PGA Tour resumes on June 11th, and we'll bring people slowly but surely back into the building. But I think, like most groups, it's business essential. So in my line of work, that means folks that are working in the control room, the engineers.
They all have to be there. When will the next live tournament be that you will cover?
We are covering a Corn Ferry Tour, which is the developmental tour in golf, and they've got a 4-day tournament in Utah. So while CBS is producing the Charles Schwab Challenge that week for us, Thursday and Friday, we're actually doing a somewhat small tournament then, but it's so good to get our feet wet into, okay, how are we going to do this?
When will that be?
Mid-June as well.
Mid-June.
And then after that, it starts to ramp up. But a lot of the other tours, because we have 5 tours on our air most weeks, it's not going to happen until August. So we get a chance to figure out how to do this and how to do this safely.
Yeah. Where's your head at in terms of, will there be a new normal? I mean, I wrestle with this when I think about it. I do feel like once there's a vaccine, hopefully, things will, I would think, settle back. I don't know if there will be lasting changes even after vaccine. I'm just curious what you think about that.
I think about what have we learned from this period of time. And I do think the audience has given us permission for imperfection. In television, we're always using the best cameras, the best access, this and that. I think all of a sudden, I'm watching Mike Tirico on Lunch Talk Live on his camera from his home in Michigan, and maybe the audience is accepting of that. Maybe they were the whole time, not total clarity, and we didn't know it in the TV industry. The sports TV industry is always at the fore of technology and making sure everything looks amazing. And you do have a really nice HD TV set, right? So our expectation is that, but I think there's a little allowance. And when you allow for imperfection, it allows for more access. And I think you saw that on the NFL draft, where we physically got to go into people's homes. And I think that's going to be a lasting effect, that the audience is going to let us play a little in the imperfection in order to give us better access. So I think that's going to be really neat. But there's also the expectation of that. I'll give you another example. We mic'd up players during the driving relief match we did on NBC and the match on Turner. And people loved it because they want to hear, they want to see things they never were allowed to. We want to have cameras up in the starting gate, you know, when Michaela Schifrin comes down, like they want to see things and get access to places they've never been before. And that's what small cameras give you. So to me, I think that's the lasting impact. And also audio. I know I could go on and on, but what are we going to do in the fall if there's not fans in the stands? So all the networks and all the different leagues are playing around with, what are we going to do? Are we playing music and hockey and we're miking up players? Are we miking up coaches? So you get more access. So if you don't hear fans, what are you hearing? Because it's the combined experience that makes it so compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought, like, for instance, you know, Tiger for the Masters, Tiger Jim Nance did a show where Tiger talked about last year's Masters and was sitting in his house. And they probably wouldn't have done that if there was no coronavirus. And I found it really compelling television. And it didn't matter that he was wearing a polo shirt and was sitting in.
And you kind of like that, right? You like, wait, what's in his background? What's he wearing? Shave? Like, there's something really interesting about that.
Yeah, like, oh, Tiger Woods has a dog. You know, it's good stuff. Let's move away from the COVID crisis and just talk about sports in general. Curious, for your perch and where you sit in the industry, what are some of the sort of key trends in the business, either very 30,000 foot or even more in the production side of the business? But what are some of the trends in the industry that you're addressing, grappling with, using as opportunities? You know, give the audience a little bit of your thoughts on that.
To me right now, it's a lot about technology. I mentioned, you know, the clarity of picture, and we've got amazing cameras, but how is technology an additive for storytelling? In particular, I think about it through the lens of golf and Olympics. And I was on a couple of calls this morning talking about, you know, how can we enhance the viewing experience? Is it second screen? Is it a separate channel that gives you this? But how can you also weave it in? And because we're so good at commentary and storytelling, but I still think in some of these sports, what they're doing is so amazing. How do we make sure that the audience appreciates it? I always look back at the 1st and 10 line and the tracing line in golf, and it changed the way we viewed those sports. There's got to be more like that. So I'm always pushing myself and others to think about what's the next best thing. And I think it is in technology. I mean, I love to watch NASCAR races because I think they're always pushing the envelope with audio, but also technology. You know, it's okay. If there's a radio, we were talking about Alpine the other day, if there's a radio between the top and the bottom and the US coaches are on it, how can we bring that to life to the viewer? Because that's cool stuff. I almost said shit. We can't say shit, right? Cool stuff
you can say
that you want to hear. So to me, it's how else can we bring the viewer closer to what they're watching, but also to make them appreciate what these athletes are doing.
Yeah. And I assume part of that, there is a dance with the relevant sports league, right? So you may have 25 ideas that you'd love to deploy tomorrow, but I gotta believe sometimes it's a negotiation with the leagues, or they say, look, we don't want to go there yet. Or is that true? Is it a constant?
Yeah, I mean, the most important part of our jobs really is partnering and relationships with the leagues. And some leagues have stronger unions than others, but you know, if you have a good idea, it may take a while to seed, but most of the time they're going to lean in. But it's a negotiations, it's talks, and if we all see value in it, it gets there. But I think that's where miking the players on the PGA Tour, this door is slowly opening because of the pandemic. So I think we're going to learn a lot. There'll be a lot of, I would say, panels on sports industry conferences going forward about what did we learn from the pandemic.
100%. You got your little vlog going, so you have all the answers. Let's turn to your fascinating career, and I'd love to talk a little bit about how you got into sports. You were in the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown. I know you mentioned to me that you grew up in your dad, I believe, was in the armed forces, so you traveled a lot. So just talk a little bit about how did sports, if at all, play a role in your upbringing, and then you're at Georgetown at the School of Foreign Service. When I hear that, I'm thinking, oh, so Molly probably wants to be a diplomat or in international affairs. So talk a little bit about that and then how it progressed into your actual?
So I always loved sports. I was a big runner growing up. I just loved to watch it on television. And my dad was in the military, so I moved 12 times in 18 years. So I say I don't have a hometown. Ended up in Italy for my high school years, which was great because then my parents really made us travel around the world, which made for a great college entrance essay. But I knew I wanted to go into sports journalism, and there's two paths. And by the way, Georgetown had no journalism or communications when I applied many years ago. And tonight would have been the night of my 30th reunion.
You're kidding. They're doing something virtually or something.
Yes. And we had a mass. We've had a whole lot of stuff. Anyway, I applied to like Northwestern, Syracuse, North Carolina, Missouri, everybody that had a journalism school. And then my best friend was applying to Georgetown. And I was like, okay, I'll apply to Georgetown. I had no interest in Georgetown, but I did. And I was like, oh, school foreign service, that sounds cool. I live in Italy. I got in, and then I visited all the other schools. Northwestern was too cold. Syracuse was too cold because I was a big runner. And, it just seemed to fit. I went for an early decision weekend and discovered beer. When I was at Georgetown, I was surprised. And but intellectually, there's two paths. You can get a degree in journalism, or you can go major in anything else, learn to write, and do a lot of internships. And as we all know, DC is like the place to go for internships. So I went to Georgetown, loved every single minute of the School of Foreign Service. But meanwhile, on weekends, I worked at the Washington Post as a copy aide and wrote high school sports. I worked for Channel 4, the George Michael Sports Machine. First.
I remember that where they hit the fake.
Right, hit the big button. So I worked there on weekends. So I worked my tail off. One Georgetown story, I worked for the Hoya my first semester, and I found out that John Thompson would not let students ask questions at press conferences. And I said, I'm out of here. So that's the one stand I've taken in my entire career.
Yes.
And so I only wrote for the Hoya for a little bit. So just internships, and then I cold called NBC Sports and ESPN, and turned out I got this job as an Olympic researcher in 1990 when I graduated. And
in Bristol?
Well, I got a job in Bristol. I was going to pay $6,000 for 6 months. My dad was like, how's that going to work? And meanwhile, but I accepted it. And then the senior week at Georgetown, I got a call to come up to NBC for an interview. And that worked out. So I traded up in some ways to NBC just because the salary was more. I'm sure would have been very happy in Bristol. Yeah. But I got a job. They handed me a credit card. They hired 2 kids per Olympics, 2 college graduates. They give you a credit card and you fly around the world for 2 years and compile all the information about the athletes. Because remember back then, Rich, there was no internet, no Google machine. That's so right. You personally talked to athletes, and we wrote 8,000 pages and put it all together. And then I was Bob Costas's researcher at the 92 Olympics. And then I stayed with the company and learned. They sent me back to the production track to learn that. And I've loved every minute. So I kind of specialized in Olympics, but did golf and football and everything else. And I've been lucky. These days in media, it's not often you meet lifers, but I'm a lifer at NBC University.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think are some of the attributes or traits that have made you successful? What would you impart to this group on, some of the things you think are important, kind of key success factors in how you do your job?
It sounds probably cliche, but I think I can outwork anybody. And it always felt, if I didn't feel secure in my knowledge or my skills, I was going to outwork you. I remember Judy Rankin, a famous golfer, she said when she got into TV, a TV exec said to her, you don't have to be the same to be equal. So I kind of always stood out because I was different, because there was no other women. But I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to outwork them and let it fall where it does. And it did. I think the other thing is you really look around and see what's not being done, and you do it without being asked. And there's a couple of key moments in my career where, I was kind of bored and I wasn't going to get promoted. I'm in a big network department. It's hard. You keep bumping your head. But then I realized, like in 2002, I was working on the Olympics, and I noticed that nobody was kind of owning how we find announcers, athletes that, you know, finish up their competitive career. How do you contemporize your on-air roster? And my boss didn't really have much interest, and we weren't doing very good in terms of upgrading, bringing in more women to on-air roles. So I was just like, hey, can I work on this? Can I take your spreadsheet? And I turned it into, for the next 8 years, I was NBC Sports head of talent. And it kind of became my lane and my specialty. And then I met all the agents in the business, which has helped me. But I never asked for more money. I never asked for a change in title. All I did was I was interested in it and I liked it. And it paid off for me. So I think that's the thing, is to look around your organization and say, hey, what's not being done? What could help what we do and make us better, and just go do it without being asked. And you never know where that can lead you. And it can lead you to a different kind of job.
And what about now? Because you're obviously a very senior leader at the company. What are some of the leadership traits that you live by?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Leadership. I have a card up here right in front of me that says be present. Because I find that on watching all these Zoom calls, like everybody's doing everything else. And as annoying as it is to be staring into this computer, multitasking doesn't do anything. You're actually doing a disservice to the people you're with. And so I really, these are things that I work on as much as looking for it in other people. I think being an active listener is such an important trait, because we're all thinking about, oh, what am I going to say next? If you're thinking about that, you're not engaged in the conversation, and you don't have to talk a lot either. And it's really hard for people to be an active listener, but that's the best way almost to be a leader, is to ask questions at appointed times. But everybody's got to jump in, and I have to work hard on this all the time. But to be present and to be an active listener, which doesn't sound like a leadership quality, but it actually is.
You also, I mean, we don't know each other that well, but you also seem like a very collaborative leader, which, I think in the 21st century, I think that works much better than, I'm sure, the old days in the 50s and 60s. You had these leaders of sports producers, and they just are dictatorial, telling what to do. And you read about how people were, the old longstanding, big players in that space were, everyone were terrified of them. But you seem like someone who's quite collaborative. Am I right about that?
I think there's something so reassuring about knowing that even if you're in charge, you don't have to have all the answers. Like, you get to surround yourself with smart people and hear everything. And sometimes you are going to be asked to make a final decision. But that's what I tell a lot of the folks that I work with. Like, you don't have to have all the answers. We're going to find it together. But all of a sudden, that's so reassuring, right? And I guess that leads to collaboration as well. I remember in 2012 when I walked into Golf Channel for the first time, and all my direct reports were men that had been there longer than that'd been there for 5-6 years, and they were all older than me. I mean, I can't tell you how intimidated I was. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so much smarter. And I tried to be very dictatorial, and we're going to do this and that. And that moment begged for, I can't wait to get to know you and listen to all your ideas. So even yesterday, I talked to someone who's taking over a new job within our organization. I said, go on a listening tour. Yeah. No better legacy for Hillary Clinton than the phrase listening tour, because it truly buys you so much goodwill within the organization, and you learn a hell of a lot.
And, if you weren't already an amazing overachiever, the other thing our audience may not know is that you have triplets. So I'm curious, during the early days of them being young kids, how on earth did you balance all of that? And what kind of approach did you take?
My kids call me the accidental mother, so I think that says about that explains everything. But to quote Hillary Clinton again, it takes a village. Like, this has been a heck of a ride with a group of people who have been tremendous. And my parents and Jeff's parents didn't live near us, so we depended on, some amazing nannies. And I guess we never expected perfection. With triplets, you just survive. But it's amazing how resilient kids are. And I read a lot of books like leading up to it in the first year, and then I threw out the manual. I said, fuck it, we're just gonna figure this out. And I think we've raised pretty good kids that way. But I'm very the phrase work-life balance, like, I don't use it. I hate it. I think it puts women and men in just a corner that they can't get out of, because one day it's work, one day it's life. And it may be that way all during the day, particularly with all these parents that are doing an amazing job trying to figure out virtual learning. But I believe in priorities, Rich. Like, you pick a priority and you focus on it. And some years your kids need it, some days your kids need it, sometimes your family needs it, but you figure it out. And there's no manual, there's no roadmap. Again, I go back to being imperfect. Imperfection is okay. And it's just different. So it's been hard. Like right now it's hard. I thought it was going to get easier when they got older. The first 3 years, my husband and I used to put a dollar sign to it. How much money would it take you to go back and do the first 3 years? Right. I think we got to 10 million after taxes. That was the price tag for us to go back and raise triplets.
And now they're in high school, right?
Now they're in high school. So today they finish up their sophomore year, but now it's like, oh shoot, we got to go do SAT prep, and I got to show you colleges, and you hate me today and you loved me yesterday. So it's all kind of crazy, but it's like everybody's life. And when you look around, you can never walk in anyone else's shoes. So, everybody's doing it differently, and that's fine, because all the kids are going to come out okay.
Yeah, good. It's obviously a very important topic to discuss, and I thought your work-life balance answer, that's very interesting. Let's talk about young people who want to be in the sports industry. First off, as you know well, there's quite a cadre of Georgetown alums in sports at all levels, and so it seems to be an area that young Georgetown students seem to be interested in. So what is some of your piece of advice for young people who either want to break into the sports industry or young people in the industry and want to try to rise up?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a great time to be getting involved in sports. As you know, there's just so many opportunities that weren't there, 10, 20 years ago, because teams and leagues are so financially healthy, and there's so many opportunities within them. Whenever I talk to someone who maybe wants a finance career, they're like, oh, but I love sports. I'm like, you can do both. The first direction is find your passion. If it's New England sports, then go work and try to find a job in New England sports. If you want to, if you're interested in television, then figure out what role. Like, my one daughter wants to go work in film someday. And I was like, there are hundreds of careers. Like, don't just think I only want to
be a movie director.
Right. Exactly. There's so many other jobs. And so, first of all, I think it's a great time. I think you've got to pinpoint your passion, and passion is the starting point. Like, for me, it was sports journalism. Okay. And then let's figure it out from there. I didn't know if it was written, if it was going to be television. There's so many different avenues. Now I want to be a college admissions counselor, but I think it's a little late to change jobs. But I saw this quote when I knew we were talking today. I loved it. My old boss, Dick Ebersol, is married to Susan St. James, who's a famous actress, although people in this call may be younger and don't remember her. But she bought a dress, and there was a label sewn into it, and it said, everything you want is on the other side of fear. Mm-hmm. And I love that, because there's so many times at crossroads I maybe didn't do something because I was scared I would fail. And it's all about, scratching your knees and getting back up and being a little bloody. Or as my buddy Rory McIlroy says, you win or you learn. So there's so much more value into trying things and falling flat on your face. And my favorite example is that they say, women read a job description, and if they can't do everything in the job description, they don't apply. Whereas men read it, you guys read it and go, I can do that. And you apply and you get the job. So just know that if you can do everything in a job description, Rich, you're overqualified for the job. You can't possibly do everything. So I think you've got to be willing to fail. You've got to risk it. And there's so much more satisfaction in trying something new and maybe not being completely successful, but man, it's fulfilling when you fill in your blanks.
And what about, there's been a real rise in the last, I'd say, decade in these like sports industry management programs. Georgetown actually has a very good one, and master's degrees in different sports areas. what are your thoughts on that? If you're talking to a younger person, would you say, yeah, sure, do that? Or, you know what, I'm not sure you need to do that in order to get into that career.
I think it depends on the field and the position. Because I don't know enough about, like finance and things like that, if it makes sense. I think anytime you learn more, it's a good thing. And particularly, I know Syracuse was telling its graduates of their undergraduate schools right now, hey, stay in school, get a graduate degree, because it's a tough economic environment out there. So if you don't have something you like, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting an advanced degree. I kind of wish I had an advanced degree, but I never took the time. Once I got in the workspace, I loved it and never went back. So I think it depends on the career track, because a lot of people, feel like you can't go very far without an MBA. And so everybody goes and does it. So I don't think I'm qualified to say it, but I don't think I discount anybody on the production side if they don't have one, because work experience in many ways replaces anything you learn in the classroom.
Yeah. And when you look at a resume of a younger person trying to break into business, aside from the passion piece that you mentioned, are there other things you like to see on a resume or in an interview what comes across from the person?
I like to gauge initiative. And to me, that's, what did you do outside of school? And maybe that's just my personal experience, that I know I sacrificed some social fun times to go do work, to work on weekends, to make ends meet. But I just think even kids that going, right now, that go out and get a job at Subway and stuff like that, shows initiative. And what else did you do besides going in the classroom and doing things like that? So I always ask about their work experience. It doesn't have to do anything with media and things like that, but show me that you know how to work hard, and it may not have been easy, but tell me what else you do besides, things like that.
They may be interested in sports, but maybe they play piano, and that's quite interesting, and they've been doing it for 15 years and have shown that sort of, continuity. That's great. We're getting short on time here. I wanted to, before we say goodbye, get just some sort of final comments from you on, perspective on where we are right now with the challenging crisis and how you look at the future. And if you were going to leave us with some parting words about, maybe where we'll be in 6 months or a year or beyond, what would you say?
One of my favorite photographers, KT Parker, she hashtags everything she does right now with the upside of downtime. And rarely, right, Rich, do we get a time to be introspective or actually be forced to take a break and evaluate what's important, what we want to do, and where we want to go. So I would just make sure we're not just idling here and not taking the time to read important books and think about things and where we want to go. Because we kind of do get a restart. Maybe in September, October is where we're going to go back out in the world, but use the time for introspection. I go back to, I think we're going to be kind of different and new. And from my point of view, we're more accepting of each other. We're listening more. We're not going to take for granted everything that we have. Can you imagine when you get to go out with a group of friends to a bar, how much we're going to enjoy that moment?
Yeah. No, great point.
I really look forward to that. And I think I'll never take personal relationships for granted anymore. I don't know about you, but I've reached out to so many more people because I have the gift of time. So I would just hope that everybody's using it like I've read so many books. It's been so awesome. And I hope I continue all these good habits. I have biceps because there's time to work out. But take nothing for granted. And family dinners for all of you, anybody that's younger growing up, family dinners are the bomb. And we have family dinner every night. If there's only one thing you do as a parent, have a couple of nights of family dinner.
We've been doing that too, and that's been wonderful.
Right?
And it's
nothing profound from me, Rich. Nothing profound.
No, those are important words, and I'm sure the sports world will return. It's a resilient industry, and the ingenuity that you're all showing, I think, is obviously inspirational, I'm sure, to people who work in the industry. And so I'm hoping for all good things for NBC and for Golf Channel and the Olympics for you. And thank you for doing this with us. I know you've got a pretty insane schedule right now, and thank you for finding the time.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. Hoya Saxa.
Absolutely. And I hope I can see you physically sooner than later.
You got it.
Okay, Molly. Thanks.